So today I'd like to tell you about the flipped classroom, which is now a very popular approach to teaching, especially in New York, where I come from. Before we talk about the details of flipped classroom, what I would like all of you to do is quickly imagine you're teaching a lesson. So this is like kind of a classic lesson, right? Imagine you're teaching a lesson on personality adjectives like confident, humble. How would you spend the first 30 minutes of this lesson if you were teaching these personality adjectives? So please take a moment and kind of imagine what your lesson would be like as a teacher. So I imagine most teachers, including myself, maybe in a typical lesson, right? We probably want to emphasize the vocabulary. So we'd start with a list of the vocabulary. We'd tell the students, hey, students, here are the personality adjectives for today. Confident, insecure, humble, arrogant, for example, right? Maybe after we teach those words, we'll use flashcards to help emphasize the meaning and for students to practice. Hardworking. Hey students, here's an image of hardworking. What does it mean? So we're practicing. Maybe we'll run some drills, right? As students get more confident. So, hey students, the positive adjective is confident. What is the negative personality adjective for that? So again, these are basically drills. And then finally, we would move towards some kind of production practice. So maybe I would assign students a personality adjective, and based on their behavior, other people have to guess the personality adjective. So for example, I would say like, I will never give you any money. Students, what personality adjective would you use to describe me? That's right, I'm stingy, right? So this is the practice. So just to review a little bit, we started with a list of vocabulary. We moved into practice with flashcards, some drills, and then finally some practice. Now, this, I believe, is a very good lesson. It is very productive. And it is kind of the original model of a PPP classroom. What I'd like to introduce today is something a little bit different. So this is called the flipped classroom. It has really become popular over the last, it really came around 10 years ago, but it has really become popular in the last 5 years, especially with the new role of technology, which I'll talk about in a moment. But in the flipped classroom, you would, for example, give students a list of the personality adjectives and drills at the end of our last class, and that's the student's responsibility. So it's the student's responsibility to prepare for your class by learning the words at home. And by doing that, when students come to this lesson, we can immediately start with questions and practice activities. So, for example, students come to the class and we're saying, hi students, last class I gave you a list of personality adjectives to review at home. Do you have any questions? So we're always making sure. And then we immediately go to practice. Just in visual form, this is what a flipped classroom would look like. So again, before, students are preparing for your class. In our example, it was learning the words at home. That's how they're preparing, right? During, we're immediately going into practice, where our role as the teacher is to provide effective feedback instead of teaching the words, right? And finally, students can also go home and review their understanding. Why is flipped classroom so beneficial? If you're a teacher, you all know that one struggle we all have is every student learns at a different speed, right? So let's say we're teaching personality adjectives and we have 10 words. One student might already know all of the words. One student might need 2 hours to learn the words. One student might need 10 hours to learn the words because we all learn at a different speed. So in the flipped classroom, we kind of have a small opportunity to create an equal starting point because we're giving students the material in advance. And by doing that, it becomes the student's responsibility to learn at their own pace and come to class at an equal starting point. So going back to our example, every student would know all of the personality adjectives before they come to class. So again, students can come to class with an equal understanding. There's also more time for practice in the classroom. We all know one of the issues as a teacher is teaching material, introducing and teaching new material takes a very long time. And if usually, like, let's say we have a 1 hour class, sometimes we don't have enough time for practice and production, which actually is the most important part of teaching. The last thing I want to focus on is, especially now more than ever, as students have become accustomed to technology and during COVID at-home learning, students don't really want lessons that are just built around information anymore. So what I mean by that is students know how to find information. They're getting better and better at finding information. So if you're the kind of teacher that just gives students information, the whole time they're just thinking, oh, why is my teacher telling me all this? I can just look at it. Like I can just look for this at home, right? So we cannot be that kind of educator anymore. Instead, our goal now becomes a facilitator. How can we provide practice opportunities for students who already have this information and they don't exactly know like how to use that information? Here are some flipped classroom challenges. So often when if you look up flipped classroom, one of the things they emphasize is that the teacher creates instructional presentations or videos for students to use before the class. Realistically, this is not possible. This is not possible for a lot of us, right? Because that's a lot of work. So really creating a lecture slide or instructional materials before class can sometimes be unrealistic. So here's my solution. Don't get stressed by this notion of flipped classroom. What I recommend is to flip just a little bit. What does that mean? Let's go back to our personality class example. Just giving the students a vocabulary list before class can be really, really helpful. This, I feel, is realistic for most teachers, right? So you don't have to do so much, but just giving students an understanding, hey, students, next lesson, we are going to practice these 10 new personality adjectives. I expect all of you to learn and practice the words at home. So when you come to class next week, we can immediately practice using these words. So I'm making the expectations very clear. It's the student's responsibility to start at that point, right? So that's what I really mean by flipping just a little bit. To me, this is a very realistic approach to the flipped classroom. Okay, so unfortunately, I do not have a chance to answer your questions or meet all of you via Zoom. So I really apologize for that, but I hope this presentation on the flipped classroom can help you a little bit in your own classrooms. Thank you, thank you. And if you have any other questions, you can always find us at Mangrove Education. Our Facebook page is Mangrove Education. So if you have any questions or you would like to contact us about the flipped classroom, just contact us anytime. Thank you, and I hope to see you again someday.